When scaling into the $3 million range, one of the hardest activities that also produces the most leverage is building a highly effective sales team. And in this video, we are going to talk about that. Yo, my name is Kajana. I run a company called Powered by Aloha. And what we do is we eliminate bottlenecks so companies can scale tomorrow. We typically focus in the $1 to $3 million range, but we have some clients as small as $2,000, and we have some clients as big as $360 million a year. We're currently working on a client right now that if we end up finishing on this transaction we're currently working on, then we'll have a client that's doing about $3 billion a year. That'd be super cool. But anyways, with all that being said, what we do is we eliminate bottlenecks, and in eliminating bottlenecks, we are able to make a company scale faster, better, quicker, more effectively, more profitably. By simply finding bottlenecks and then eliminating them so that the company can decide to scale tomorrow when they decide to. Now, with that being said, I want to do something a bit different in this video because normally I go through the process of like, let's find the bottleneck, let's break it down, let's do our fact finding. But more than that, let's just talk about building a I hesitate to use the word world class because I've not been in like hundreds of sales teams all around the world, so I don't really know what world class is. But what I can tell you is using this framework, we've built several dozen sales teams in different organizations that we were able to lift revenue from, depending on how big the org was, by as little as 1.5, which was an increase of like, $3 million, to putting them into huge changes of like 9x performance increase, in which, it sounds fancy, but by putting them into orgs that went from, 1.5 to like, oh, not 1.5, sorry, from 900 to 1.5, and then to 2, and then 2.5, and then 3 over the course of like a year or 2 years. So anyways, this is everything I know about building sales orgs. I've been in sales orgs. My very first real job was a door knocker. As a door knocker, the first door I ever knocked, I made a sale. That same month, I ended up making 19 sales. But then the following month, I only did 2 sales. And that's kind of where this entire process, as I've been in this game of, scaling companies for the last really 6 years, if you ask me. But the entire length of my career, I've been basically marketing and selling for almost 11 years now. And these are the lessons that I've learned, the systems I've built, the structures that we've looked at as we've gone in and scaled up several dozen companies in dozens of industries. So with that being said, let's jump right into it. So first up, let's kind of like high level what we're going to be talking about in this video. So we're going to be looking at the overall sales process. Jesus, that is small. One sec. That's like really... Okay. So we're going to look at the overall sales infrastructure process. And this is important because there is a very common thing that happens is when you have a owner in a company, the owner is typically the best salesperson that exists. And the reason that the owner is the best salesperson that exists is because the owner simply has the most understanding of the entire business. And because they have a great understanding of the entire business, they are able to then pull on information and or facts and or understandings that a typical salesperson would not have. So as a result of that, they're able to close better. Very easy. Imagine that you are a world-class tax planner and you know the ins and outs of every single IRS code that exists on the face of the planet. If you hop on the call with someone, it'll be much easier for you to get them to buy because you know every single thing on the face of the planet. But when you're looking at bringing on sales reps and or increasing sales reps and or getting sales reps from one location to a new location or to a third location or to a fifth location where you're no longer directly overseeing them, then there are things that have to exist in the overall sales infrastructure in order for them to perform as well as you. Very quick math on that. Right, so a very easy one is, let's say that you are the founder, the owner, right? Owner, yeek. The owner, that is you, and you are closing at 60%. So that means in every 10 conversations you have, you get 6 people to buy, which is really good. Then you have a rep. This is a very common one that we hear, and the rep only closes at like 20%. So the owner's like, yo, I need these reps to close more. Maybe that is the case. In most cases, it's not, because in a typical sales model, sales reps close between 20 and 30%. That's like the benchmark. So this is a very common thing owners will say is, oh, I need my sales reps to close as good as I am. Like, no one is as good as I am. Sure, that's true. But let's look at the other side of that math. If realistically, you're the owner, you're probably spending maybe 25% of your time in sales because you have delivery to oversee, you have recruiting, legal, supplies, lead generation, traffic, all that stuff. So if you think about it, if you're closing 1 in you're closing 6 and 10 people, right? That's a 60% conversion, but only 25% of your time is closing. Then that means over time, what was the math on that? 10. So that means if we math that down, 10 to 6 is 60%. And if you're only working 40 hours, that means if you're taking, easy math, you're doing 40, that means you're spending 10 hours a week in sales in order to generate 6. Now let's look at it from the perspective of a sales rep. If a sales rep is closing at 20%, but 100% of their job is closing, then if we do the math on that, that means if they're working 40 hours a week and 2 in people buy out of 10, and every week they're able to talk to trying to do some math in my head. Every week they're able to talk to 40. And every day they talk to 6 people realistically. 6 times 5 is 30. That means in 30 calls they will end up closing 6 people, which is the exact same amount if you were the owner. Only difference is they're closing less than you, but they're spending more time than you. And the reason this is important is, imagine you have 10 reps who are doing the same thing. Now you're closing 60 people a week without changing any of these numbers. Leverage, right? How can we create more leverage in this business? Now, that being said, let's kind of walk through it from top to bottom. All the things. Now, these are not things that we do in order of priority because it's unique to where your business is. And like for our typical content, right? Where is the bottleneck, right? Where is the bottleneck in this problem? But from an overarching perspective, here is kind of the entire infrastructure that we would put in place when we were looking at really building a strong sales system. So first up, we have onboarding. So let me just kind of talk you through it. So onboarding is typically a 14-day process. And in that 14 days, what you're doing is you are getting your sales reps ready to enter onto the floor. Now, whether you are someone who's doing like a high transaction retail sales, think of like a kiosk, think of like gym membership sales, think of like, someone who walks into the door at a retail store. Or on the other hand, we're doing high ticket closing sales. You're hopping onto a 30, 60-minute call with a lead and you are like back and forth consulting them and all that kind of stuff. We still do the same 14-day onboarding period. What that typically looks like is 14 days of them just seeing what good looks like. So again, if you're in the kiosk version, let's say that you're selling, you're selling like fidget spinners. Well, this is fidget spinners. Fidget spinners. If you're selling fidget spinners, then what you're looking at is how can you get someone, there are 3 parts to that sales process. You need to do your call out to grab their attention. You need to give them the demo so they can see the fidget spinner. Then you need to close them, aka the transaction of money. So in the first 14 days during onboarding, all we're going to do is we're going to have a rep follow around the best closer and or manager, depending on how the business model works. And all they're going to do is watch them do good reps. They're going to watch them do call outs. They're going to watch them do demos. They're going to watch them do closes. Then if we flip it over to like high ticket sales, where you are going to have some recordings of calls, because calls are typically going to be recorded on like Zoom or Google Meet or whatever, then what we do is we just have them watch good sales processes every single day. Now, it's important to differentiate. There's a difference between getting the close and the proper sales process, because some people are just coming looking to buy and they want to spend money and they want to spend money on this. They've already done all of the research. So if they buy in that situation, did you close them? Or were they already interested in buying, so it was an easy one? Whereas when you go through a proper sales process, which is the process of maybe someone was interested in buying, or they are lukewarm, and then you convert them over to being interested and then eventually closing them. When we were doing onboarding, we want them to watch, game tape or film, if you think of it from a sports perspective, of what is doing your job properly. Because doing your sales process properly doesn't always result in a close, but it does result in the proper sales process being used in a standardized way, so that, and we'll get a bit more into this later on, that is, we don't know if it's working or not if we're just measuring on closes made. We're also measuring adherence of the sales process, because of the sales process, if we see a trending downward performance, is the question, is it that the sales process is no longer working, or is it an issue of the leads are no longer a good fit, and or what's different and what's changing? And again, that we're gonna get more into that further on in this video. So first we do our 14-day of onboarding where they're just drilling, they're just watching. In this time frame, typically we're gonna have them meet with their manager towards the end of every day to go over everything they reviewed. Game tape. They're gonna if they're like on the online model, in person, they're gonna sit there. They're gonna watch the manager or the top closer go through the process of doing their call outs, doing their demos, and then doing their closing process. Then after we do the 14 days of onboarding, we then move them onto a half schedule. And in the half schedule, let's say that you're on, your phone sales reps are taking 6 calls a day, then we're going to give them 3 calls a day, and we're going to let them slowly work their way up because we don't want to burn through leads. And typically, depending on how sophisticated the business is, like with lead routing and another system we built, which is the NHAT, never have a tire kicker on your calendar ever again, where we are segmenting leads based upon their ability to buy. We're going to feed them okay to bad leads so they can get through the reps required to understand the sales process. We don't want to burn good leads on onboarding reps. We want to reserve our best leads for our best closers and give the onboarding reps the passable to bad leads so they can work through the motions. And then that is onboarding. So again, 14 days of they do all their game tape, they do the learn, they understand. Then once they've gone through their 14 days, during the 14 days, they also talk with their sales manager to walk through the process. What did you see? What worked? What didn't work? Script adherence, so on and so forth. In the same time, we also have them begin learning their script. Basically, the script is like, there's a structure for the script, which is the overall, how do you do your openers? What are your openers overall? Then you have your this is for in person. Then you have your demo. What is the demo process? How do you tie the opener to the demo and then the close? Whereas like online, we have a more structured, longer script that's, hey, how do you do your KYC? Know your customer. How do you see what they've already done? How do you know what things they've already tried before we go into selling them the dream? What's the big idea? How do we empathize with their position? And how do we reinforce the decision over and over? Basic framework is Closer. A lot of people know this. I did not make this concept up. Closer is a very well-known one. And Closer basically comes out to, if you ever watch a Hormozy video, you ever watch a Elliot video, they all talk about this in their own formats, but they're the same thing, which is simply confirm, why talk, why hear, label problems, overview, solutions, attempted, then sell a dream, then empathize, position, and then reinforce decision, right? This is nothing new. A lot of people follow this, and if you don't, well, now you know. But when we think about this, this is the process of what we're looking at when going over the overall script. Now we're not gonna get too much into the script in this because this is not building your sales process. This is about building your sales team, the infrastructure required to build your team. So then after you have your rep who's onboarded and they've now gone into their half schedule, if you don't fire them because they meet the criteria, then they move into a full schedule eventually. Now, once we move into full schedule, we then move them, or even prior to full schedule technically, is we now go into daily training. So every single day that a rep is on the ground, they are needing to, every day they're on the ground, they have to drill. There is no exception. So what we do is we find the slowest part of the day, and during that time is when we have training. Training is going to be 30 to 60 minutes, depending again on your sales process. High transaction sales, 30 minutes. More consultative, longer term, high ticket sales, 60 minutes. And what we do is we break training down into 3 sections. First, we have we reinforce the wins. So people will go and like clients that they've sold who would leave like testimonials or reviews, we will have them printed out and we will give it to them and they will read it off about, hey man, John, good job. John closed Jonathan. Jonathan left us a review. Hey, John, go and read the testimonial so we can all get hyped on that. Like, this is why we do our job. This is why we get into it. So then John, who sold the guy, will read the testimonial and he's feeling all good. He's like, man, I helped that person make this change in their life and it was so awesome. Everyone else is like, yeah, John, you're the man, giving you some kudos. And it keeps the energy high because, as I'm sure you know, sales is all about energy. When you quite frankly feel like shit, you sell like shit and you don't get shit that be sold. That's how it works. High energy, you come in with good energy, people vibe with you, they buy your shit. Kind of how it works, right? So in our daily training, we have the opening section, which is going through reviews and whatnot. And then the second section is we just drill. We drill over and over and over and over and over again. Break reps into 2s. We have them drill through a specific phase of the sales script. Could be the open, could be the demo, could be the close, or in the online model, Could be the KYC, could be CL, could be CLO, could be LO, could be S, could be E, could be R, could be objection handling. It's just kind of knowing where your sales reps are and kind of going through the entire script over an extended time period. So then after we have them drill, we then go and have them go and give us feedback on what have they been feeling overall as a team in terms of leads coming through, because we're routing them. Is it a hot season? Is it a slow season? Is it there's not enough foot traffic? Is there less foot traffic than usual? Is it because it's summertime versus wintertime? We're always looking to collect every day, because the more that they talk amongst themselves, the more they're able to pass data around what is or isn't happening on when they're on the sales floor. And we do that, and then we split up, and that's like our daily training schedule that we have people do. So again, it's going to be testimonials, it's going to be drills, and then what are we seeing? What are we seeing? And we do this every single day without failure. We drill. If you are selling that day, you drill. The only reason you would not be drilling is if you have a sales call booked for that time period. Otherwise, you drill every single day. So then after our daily training, we have weekly training. And weekly one-on-ones, my bad. We have our weekly one-on-ones. During weekly one-on-ones, what we're doing is we are having the sales rep meet with their manager. Now, the structure of this call is basically the same every single time, and that is the manager. Let's say you're an online model where you're recording your sales calls, and if you're not recording your sales calls, you definitely should, for a compliance perspective. That's a huge miss. So they will go and they will review 1 or 2 calls. They will listen through all of it on 2x speed, and then what they'll do is they will then sit down with the rep, usually a 30-minute meeting, 15-30 minute, depending on the complexity of the sales process and stuff like that. And what they'll do is they'll identify what's the one thing that they need to improve on that call. So they're going to go, they're going to listen, they're going to write down every single note of what could have been done better. Is it tonality? Is it pitch? Is it timing? Is it silence? Is it the script itself? Is it the positioning of the product? Is it, hey, you didn't hear what that person was saying, so on and so forth. Then what they do is they will write all those down, and they will select the one that has the biggest impact on the overall sales process. And then when they meet with their sales rep, they're going to say, hey man, listen to your calls. Here's the thing we really need to work on right now. So let's drill it. Let's role play it right now. And then what we'll do is we'll say, hey, this is how you did it. This is how you're going to do it instead. Then they're going to go and they're going to watch it and they're going to do it, and then they're going to keep doing it until the rep does it correctly. And then what we're going to do, the sales manager will pause and say, great, that was exactly it. Say it again. Say it again, say it again. Okay, cool, let's continue. And that's how we treat our weekly one-on-ones between managers and sales reps. So that is review calls, choose one problem, drill it down. Because the whole thing with sales is an extremely repetitive activity, right? Sales is extremely repetitive. So the name of the game is, if we know that sales is very repetitive, then that also means that we want to build the muscle memory. That is, when you are going through the process, you are pulling on the correct motion, the correct frame, the correct tonality when we are going through the sales process. So the best way to reinforce that is we just drill it more and 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 more until you become a machine. So that comes into our weekly one-on-ones. After our weekly one-on-ones, we have our monthly increase. And what I should do is actually monthly potential increase. Now, when we're looking at sales is simply a game of repetition and volume, right? You want your salespeople to close more often. And typically, and if they're not, I personally would fire them. Sales is a very competitive game. You want people to be incentivized to do better forever and ever and ever and ever. So that we do that is we increase pay on a monthly basis based upon the previous month's performance. Easy math. So let's say that right now my sales reps get 10%. And again, easy math, we're just gonna say they sell a $100 product. $100. So what we do is, if they are able to maintain, I'm gonna make a number up right now, if they can maintain $10,000 of sales in 1 month, then what we'll do is we'll take their 10% and we'll bump it up to 12.5%. And that goes into the next month. Then let's say that from the 12.5%, we say if they're able to maintain $15,000 of sales volume in that month, we'll take their 12.5% and we'll actually bump it up to 15%. So basically, if they're able to maintain their sales volume, they make more money. So if this month is August literally, if I were able to hit the 10K last month in the month of July, I would go from getting paid 10% per sale, which is what I did last month, but because I hit $10,000, this month I'll actually make 12.5%. But here's the catch. And that is, if this month I'm unable to maintain $10,000 in volume, I go back to 10%. Now, the reason that we do it this way is we want to incentivize people to close more. The more they close, the more money we make as business owners. So knowing that, we want to show them, if you can reach a benchmark of volume, I will pay you more money for that month. And if you can maintain that volume, I will continue to pay you more money. And if you can reach the next threshold or the next milestone of volume, I will pay you more money. But if you slide backwards, then what will happen is we will pay you less money. Now, in the example I said 1 month. I wouldn't typically do one month. I would do 2 months. So, for example, if I did $10,000 last month in the month of July, in the month of August, I would get my 12.5%. If I'm unable to hit the $10,000 this month, I will have in the month of September. I will still maintain my 12.5%. But if I do 2 months back to back of falling below milestones, I will then be reverted to whatever amount is appropriate. So in the example of 15% of 15,000, if I did 15,000 this month, but then or last month, and then I do 10,000 this month, and then 10,000 again, I will fall back down to my 10,000 percentage. Versus if I do less 10,000 and then less than 10,000, I will revert back to my less than 10,000 percentage on my commissions. And we do this way because there are two things to factor in. One of the biggest problems in sales is a really good closer who's just like all raw talent. They usually sell like this. And what I mean by that is 1 month they're super hot and they're on it, and then something happens and then they're off. And then the next month they're super on it and they're crushing, and then the next month they're off. And they go through this up and down cycle over and over, which a lot of people say, oh, that's just a game of sales. I do not believe that. I fundamentally believe if we standardize the way that the selling process works, then even on their low months, at least they'll be able to continue their threshold, but not fall below benchmarks. Whereas on their hot months, we're going to be able to squeeze out even more sales. So instead of thinking of like raising the ceiling, how about we raise the floor? So even if we're only doing $15,000 in sales is the ceiling and the floor is 5,000, how can we standardize this process so the ceiling remains to be 15, or rather, instead of focusing on making 15 become 20, we make 5 stay 10. That way we're never going to have them drop below $10,000 in performance, which means over time they will become better and more reps get in. The ceiling will automatically go from $15,000 to $20,000 and $25,000 and so on and so forth. I hope that makes sense. So with that being said, when we think of this and we're looking at the sales monthly potential, it is we increase if hit and maintain benchmark, and then we decrease if miss and again benchmark. That way reps are like always incentivized to go and push harder and drill back down. And then finally, after all of that, we have our last section of the, let's call it the primary system, which is our quarterly KPIs. KPIs and cuts. So after having done all of this, what we will then do is at the end of the quarter, we will then go look at the individual performance or KPIs, key progress indicators, KPIs per rep, and then we look at KPIs per team. So this is assuming like if you have like a morning shift versus a night shift, or you have this location versus that location, or you have for larger organizations, your North America team versus your South America team, or your Indiana team versus your New York team, or whatever, is we look at the KPIs per rep and per team. And what we do is by looking at these, we then see how are the reps' individual performance, and then as a team, how is the sales manager's performance? Because something we're trying to understand is when we look at these key performance indicators, are our reps our problems? Is our manager our problems? Is it that this location is better than that location? Is it that this location is making more money? Is it that this location is taking more repetitions per sales calls? Is it that this location is getting more foot traffic? Is it that this time zone is getting more leads, and so on and so forth? Because what we want to do is we want to look at our quarterly KPIs, and our goal is we want to cut bottom performers. Now it sounds rude, or it sounds like a dick move, but very frankly, bottom 20% of performers. So people who fall into the did not meet KPIs, we fire them because they didn't meet their job. And then for those, even if we are all above KPIs to keep things competitive, we will look at cutting and firing off the bottom 20%, even if they meet KPIs. Now, a part of it comes down to the culture of your organization. Like some teams are just like, hey, as long as we stay within KPIs or above KPIs, we're good. Versus some teams are like, they really want to squeeze as much juice out of the fruit every single time. So then in those models, we will go in and we will fire off the bottom 20%. Again, it comes down to your business model, what culture you believe in, so we can approach that accordingly. So this is the cadence of sales infrastructure when we are scaling. We have our onboarding 14 days of just listening to game tape and or watching sales happen in real time. And then at the end of the day, they will go in and they will meet with their manager for 15-30 minutes, looking at what they learned, what they noticed, what they saw, what they didn't see, so on and so forth. Then after they do the 14 days, we're still unwrapping them. We'll put them on a half schedule. So they'll be on the floor selling half the time, and the other half of the time they will continue to be part of they will continue reviewing game tape and footage, or recordings, if you will, or live interactions until they're up and ready. Once we graduate into a full-time schedule, then they have their daily training every single day. If you are on the floor, you are training. That's how this works. Unless you have a sales call, there's no other reason to be out of training. Daily training, we go through testimonials and wins at the beginning of the day. Then after that, we go and we do our drilling. We take one portion of the script and we work it from top to bottom. Could be C, could be L, could be O, could be S, could be E, could be R, could be C into L, could be N to O, so on and so forth. Could be objections, so on and so forth. There are many things we could be doing. And then we go over and say, what are we seeing? What are some of the trends that we've been seeing since yesterday, we were seeing this week, so we can get that data across everyone inside of the organization so we're all on the same page. Then after that, we have our weekly one-on-ones. That's when sales reps are going to be meeting with their manager. One-on-one's going to be either a 15-30 minute meeting, and in that, prior to that, the manager is going to review 2 sales calls, like 2x speed, to identify what are the problems that the rep is having so they can choose the one problem to really focus on. Then what they're going to do is with that rep, they're going to drill it down. They're going to take that one location. They're going to say, great, here's how you're going to say it. And then once the rep does it correctly, the manager will say, okay, cool, do it again, do it again, do it again, do it again 4 times. All right, cool, let's move on. And then we're going to drill this down over and over. Because if we make one change every single week over the course of, 52 weeks or 56 weeks, 350, over the course of 52 weeks, they will get that much better. Maybe we just pick one problem and solve it every single time, as opposed to giving them a ton of problems at one time. Then every month we do our monthly potential increases, and that is when if they hit their volume and or they maintain it, then we will increase their commission. Whereas if they miss their volume and miss it again, we will then decrease their commissions. That way we are always incentivizing them to perform better. And then finally, we have our quarterly KPIs and cuts. We're looking at KPIs per rep versus KPIs per team, and rep being the individual salesperson, team being sales manager. And then we will cut the bottom 20% of performers or those beneath KPIs. Again, it comes down to your org and how you guys look at performance and creating competition. Some orgs, whether it's a function of performance or it's a function of the number of salespeople that are available in that industry, will just do it if they fall beneath KPIs. An example of that is like tax planning firm where you need CPAs who can also sell. There aren't a lot of them. There are not a lot of CPAs who understand tax code and can sell. Not very often you will find one. So in a model like that, we will focus more on if you fall beneath KPIs, we fire you. Now, I didn't talk about PIPs yet, but we'll talk about it in a minute. Versus in super high transaction organizations, call them door-to-door salespeople, or like insurance brokers, those who do outbound calling. Every quarter, regardless if you hit KPI, or rather, if you don't hit KPIs, you get fired already. If you hit KPIs, we still fire off the bottom 20% because we always want to get more and more aggressive and better people into the org to increase sales. Again, not everyone's cup of tea, but it's understanding your org and your business. So this is our overall infrastructure, right? Now, with that being said, let me move this over and let's talk a bit more about the twiggly danglers in between to maximize even more performance. So first, let me just delete all of this. First up, we have our performance improvement plan, otherwise known as a PIP. So when we're looking at PIPs, what we are doing is basically if someone falls beneath benchmarks 2 months in a row, or they fall beneath their quota on a weekly or monthly basis, depending on your sales cycle, then we put people on a performance improvement plan. And basically a PIP is a rerun of onboarding. And what I mean by that is what we'll do is we will bring them back to half schedule. So back to half schedule. and the time that they're not, in the times that they are not selling, we then have them review footage. Or in the case of in-person sales, we have them shadow. And the reason is, more often than not, in a performance improvement plan, there are two questions we have to ask ourselves. Is the reason this rep is failing is because they have lost the fundamentals of their skill training, or is the reason that they're failing is something happened and is throwing them off their game? Both of them are very feasible reactions, right? Someone could have a death in their family and they're just not in their groove and they're just not able to perform well. But we don't want to just fire them because before the death in their family, they were crushing it. They were doing really well. So what we do was we want to move them back into a PIP to get them back up to speed, give them some time to get their feet back under them. On the other hand, if they're just not having, they're not performing well, then we have to ask ourselves, what is happening that is stopping this person from performing from a script structure perspective, which we're going to talk more about in a minute. So then we go into reviewing, so they rerun of onboarding, which is, again, half schedule, and then they are reviewing footage and shadowing. Then what we do is once they get back up to hitting their quota on a typically weekly basis, we'll then put them back onto full-time schedule. And then they go back to their daily training routine and all that stuff with everyone else. But the important thing is that if someone ends up falling into a PIP twice in a row, back to back, again, weekly or monthly, depending on how you look at your schedule, then we fire them. Just not a good fit anymore. And that's just what it is, not a problem. So that's one thing we do, which is the performance improvement plan. Now, the next thing we do is we look at incentives, and we build in little incentives. So from my perspective, when I'm looking at building a sales org, like I said earlier, while I do want to raise the ceiling, I care less about raising the ceiling. I care more about raising the floor. Because if I raise the floor, I can, mathematically ensure that the ceiling will automatically increase until an upper limit, because eventually an upper limit's achieved and it can no longer be solved by hiring on more sales reps. And then you have to build it on a manager, which then brings on additional sales reps, or then you need additional managers, or then you need additional locations, and so on and so forth. So what I like to do is like to bring in incentives, and incentives are around the activities that make them better at sales. So for example, one thing that we use extremely well for a on the phone model is we gave a $10 script adherence bonus. Basically what we did is we put together a plan that was, hey, we want our reps to close better because we can see an issue here. Every time you follow the script correctly, whether you make the sale or you don't, we're giving you $10 because we want to drill script adherence, because the script itself is what should do the selling and the rep is simply bringing the script to life. So by doing this, if someone came in and they just didn't do a single sale, but they hit their script 6 times in a row over the course, or in one day over the course of a week, now we're like, okay, we can see the script, this new variation of the script is not working, but we're still paying the reps because we want to incentivize the action of what makes a sell, which is the script. We build the script so that you follow the script because we know the script works. When we're testing scripts or we want to get increased conversion rate, or we are wanting to drill adherence more, we build an incentive like $10 script adherence bonus. Again, every time you do the script properly, we give you $10. Another example of this is flipping on the other side, and this is technically not an incentive, it's like a de-incentive, I guess, and that is close without script, no commission. So something we were running into one of our orgs was we had these 2 closers who were killing it. They outperformed everyone else by like quadruple the sales. The issue is we were unable to get them to adhere to the script. They would just go off script all the time, which is great from one perspective because we were making more money. But the thing is, we were unable to drill down so we can make everyone else do better. Because again, math. If I have 2 reps who are doing 10 sales each, but then I have 10 reps who are doing 1 sale each, for a total of 10 sales, then is it going to be easier to find a third person who can do 5 sales? Or is it going to be easier to bring on one person who can do 1 sale and or have these guys all sell 1 additional unit? The second one's obviously easier. So we're running into real like script adherence problems with those closers. So what we told them was, and we really wanted to drill down what they were doing. So what we did was we rebuilt the script around them, a 1 core script, and we told them, look, if you close any deals not using the script you provided for us, we will not give you your commission. They thought we were playing. So they went and closed like 3 or 4 deals and like, oh, I can't wait for my payout this Friday. We're like, nah, dog, you did not follow the script. Therefore, you don't get your commission, which is a huge de-incentivization. Now, again, maybe you don't want to do that. That could be a bit aggressive, but it worked for us because by doing that, we actually got them to offload their script to us more cleanly and better. And in doing so, we were able to roll out the new script to our other reps. And as a result of that, we were able to get the reps to triple their close rates. And we all just made a shit ton more money, quite frankly. So, so going back to looking, what the heck? Did not want to do that. Okay. So then other incentives are the ability to, other easy incentives that we wrote out today is we would pay more for more cash collected. Easy math on this. So looking at a payment plan or looking at an online sales model, what we did is we were selling an offer. The offer was $9,000. It was either sold in a 3,300 times 3 for 9,900 or for 9,000 prepay. So if the rep was able to get the payment plan, which was a 3,300 times 3 times, we would pay them 10%. If we were able to get them to do the 9,000 prepay upfront, we would pay them 11.5%, a 1.5% boost. The reason is we wanted to incentivize the collection of cash upfront because the more cash we collect upfront, the more money we can run on marketing to get more leads in. Whereas if we broke it out across more payment plans, on one hand, we had less cash up front, which means less that we can reinvest back into marketing. But the other side of that was in that business model, once someone moved into a payment plan, the likelihood that they would churn on the second payment was above 10%. So that means in 10 people, one person would churn and we would lose out on that money. That's $6,600 that we lost out on. So we wanted to incentivize people buying up front because the no, we got them up there, churn was less than 1%. Whereas people who went to the people who bought at the 3,300 times 3 times, we had an average churn around like 9 to 10%. So I'd rather pay the rep more money in order to get them to get the person to commit than lose out on the money and so on and so forth. So an easy one that you can incentivize is pay more for more cash collected. I guess I should put upfront. So those are very easy incentive structures you can put in place with your existing reps in order to get them to buy more. So following that same model, I know a guy who does a kiosk style business. What they do is if you are able to sell this product, it's a 4-unit product. If you sell the 4-unit product and then you can get them to buy 2 more units, any additional units is all house money to you. They're just going to give you the product for free. So that means if you can get them to buy 6 units, then that would cover the cost of all the materials. Every additional unit you sold on top of that, whether you sold 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 units, that was all 100% money back in the sales rep's pocket. Boom, easy incentive structure. Then after we have our incentives, we then look at competition. And that is quite frankly, we want to build an environment where people are competitive when we want them to win. So what we would do is, and again, different orgs, different models, but what we would do essentially is we would have weekly performances and competitions and monthly competitions. Basically, we say, hey, whoever gets the most top 2 for these metrics, whether it be number of dollars collected, number of units sold, number of pitches made, number of scripted adherence implied, so on and so forth, we would make a competition out of it. So the top 2 reps would win additional things. Now, on the weekly ones, we would usually give them some kind of like easy incentive, like $50 Amazon card, something like that. That was really small. Versus on the monthly ones, we would give them like you get a bonus of like an additional 1% of whatever you close if you won that competition. Because again, we want to create an environment where people are like really feeling incentivized to compete and win. Because salespeople by nature are competitors. And again, like I said earlier, if you're not a competitor, I don't know that I would want you on my sales team. Again, there are some instances of like some business models like the CPA world where you don't really find CPAs who are also closers. It's very, very rare you find someone who's good at both. So it's a bit different, but again, you want to breed that competition as much as possible. So we build our weekly competitions and our monthly competitions. Now, if you want to get like crazy wild with this, the way you would then do this is as you are rolling out new things into your business that you want to test, you would align them with these competitions. Easy example. So one of our businesses, they were doing it's a service-based business, but they were rolling out an AI type product and they wanted to get more data on the AI product to see how feasible it was for a non-technical professional to use this product to achieve the same outcome. So what we did is we built a monthly competition that was, hey, what we're going to do is whoever sells the most units of the AI product, one competition, and whoever can sell the most dollars collected on the AI product would win the monthly competition. And in doing this, what we were able to do, and this is, I'm gonna stray a bit and talk a bit about onboarding just a little bit in this model, because we wanted people to try out the AI product. We wanted the number of units sold, right? Someone who's just selling it and willing to cut deals. We give them a ceiling and a floor. At the most you can sell this product for 20,000. I'll give you real numbers. At the most you can sell this product for $5,000. At the lowest you can sell this product for $1,500 bare minimum. But if you close at 1,500, you only get a 1% commission, which is like essentially nothing. But if you sell at 5,000, then you would get the full commission, which in that product was a 5% commission. So we set those benchmarks, but at the same time we said, hey, but on the other hand, is if you sell products, if you sell the product in units, right? The number of units you sold is even if you sold at 1,500, but you were able to sell 10 of them, we would then bump you up from the 1.5% to 2%. But then if you sold 30 of them, we would move from the 2% to the 3% to incentivize the movement of units as well as the cash collected in the testing of this product. And going into onboarding a little bit. Now, going into onboarding, what we did is when we sold it this way, when we set up this system to get it to work, is we had whoever sold the person would also be part of the onboarding process, so they can communicate over to the onboarding, the CSR specialist, customer service relationship specialist, the usage for the AI and the product. And we also incentivize that, but that's outside of the scope of sales straight up, so I'm not going to talk about that one. But we did it this way to get as many repetitions of the product that we could, as many repetitions of the AI product that we could, so that we can get use cases on what was or was not working. And so that's one way that you can, if you're rolling out new products, you want to test things, you then just simply build competitions around with your sales team weekly and monthly in order to maximize the number of testing data points you're able to put into the business. That's another way we use that. And then finally, we have recruiting. Man, I'm struggling on that. Okay. Recruiting. So anyone who knows sales knows that sales is a body game. The number of bodies who are on the floor is a direct correlation to the amount of money you can make. One sales rep, even if they're a killer, will not outsell 10 sales reps if the 10 sales reps are trained properly. Because at the end of the day, one sales rep can only take, let's say it's 1 hour, 1 hour conversation. They can take 6 a day. That's only 6 times 5, 30 calls. Whereas if I have 10 people taking 6 calls a day, 5 times a week, that's 6 times 5 is 30 times 10 is 300 at bats. Mathematically, the 300 will always win against the 130 if they are properly trained. So knowing that, one of the things that we built, and I think is one of the most brilliant things we've ever come up with when it comes to recruiting, is we would have our sales reps go and recruit sales reps, and that'd be their friends, that'd be people that they know, that'd be social media, so on and so forth. And the way that we built it is when they would bring a rep on, right, they would onboard him, they would work with the sales manager to onboard that rep. And what I mean by that is in the 14-day, if you look back up here in onboarding, we have the 14-day on-ramp period. What we would do is we'd have the closer, the person who brought that rep on, and the manager, they would both train those reps together. And the reason that we incentivize this is for the recruiting, the manager gets their percentage, they get their, they get their base salary, anywhere from $1,000 to $6,000 is the most we've ever paid a manager, plus their performance, right? They get a 1 to 2 bump on what every one of the team sells. But what we would do it this way is the manager is now able to talk to them from a manager perspective, but the rep who brought them on is also talking to them from a rep perspective. And the reason this is important is the rep who brought them on would get a percentage of the sales just like the manager did. So now their percentage of sales. Now they're both incentivized to really get this person up to speed and get them to be a fucking banger. And the reason it's so valuable for us is, people who are good salespeople typically hang out with other people who could be good salespeople or have the right skills, right? Birds of a feather flock together, or same, hang out, or lookalikes, or whatever the fuck, who cares? But the perspective is, if we got people who are already salespeople and these reps are depending on what we're selling, right? We have some orgs where we have these 20-year-old reps who are bringing in $120,000 a year just selling, and then we have these orgs where these 30-year-olds are bringing home $400,000 just selling, and the people around them are like, holy shit, how do you have all this money and all this car and all this stuff? Well, if you want to be part of the game, come work for us. Like, come join my group, my firm, or my business, depending on what business model we're talking about. But we'd have them recruit their friends in, and then they would be doubly incentivized to really get them going. And in doing that, we were able to, quite essentially 1.5 to 4x the growth of sales teams over the course of a quarter or the course of a year, simply because we incentivized the reps to bring in their people to sell, because they could see, here's a 20-year-old guy making 120, 150, $180,000 doing fucking kiosk sales, and here's this guy who is a no real skills previously, 30 years old, bringing in $250,000, selling a $5,000 product online. Like, their friends are like, how the fuck are you doing this? And they want to bring them in. So we would use them as actually an excellent way to recruit and show off to how much money you can make in these orgs. And then bringing them in. And this is across all sectors, right? This is from selling technology to selling SaaS, selling home services, selling professional services. Like, it all works across all those. You just have to build it properly. And that kind of brings me back to like the final thing I want to say before we wrap up this entire concept. When we're looking at sales, I said it twice, I'm going to say it again. When we're thinking of building sales systems, right? Infrastructure, building teams, managers, multiple reps, multiple locations. A lot of people get caught up on, let's push the ceiling higher, which is valuable because you make more money. But I'm much more interested in, how do we raise the floor? Because if we raise the floor, by definition, the ceiling will automatically increase as a direct result of that, because we've simply shifted the economics from being 5,000 and 15,000 to being 10,000 and 20,000. Whereas the ceiling has an infinite return over time, because every now and then you come across someone who's just wildly talented, or who has a fucking killer instinct, or who can pattern match, or whatever reason, and they just crush it. But instead of having it, but you don't find lots of those people. Typically, you don't usually have 5. Let's say you have a 10-person sales team. You're not going to have 5 of them be A-class closers. That's not really how it works. Typically, 2 of them will be A-class closers. Then you're going to have 5 of them that are B-class closers. You're going to have 2 C-class closers, and you're going to have 1 D-class closer that you should totally fire, but you keep them around for whatever reason. That's a very typical breakdown of a sales team. So if we think of it that way, what if instead of going from 2, 5 to 1, that being A, B, C, D, we instead go to 2 A-class closers, but then we now have 8 B-class closers. You're going to make way more fucking money if you do that, by just having 3 of those people go from being C and D respectively to being Bs, because they're going to crank way more. Now your floor has been risen, which not only creates more opportunity for you to make even more money. And that's like one of the big things I always talk about when it comes to sales teams, is like, how can we get the floor to be raised and higher? Because if this goes up, by definition, the ceiling automatically goes up as you get more talent, more money, better compensation, so on and so forth. And yeah, that's about it. So in this, go ahead. If you were listening, you're like, man, this makes a lot of sense. Fuck yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I've done this a bajillion. That's not true. I've done it several dozen times. So with that being said, go ahead and I'm going to hold this right now. Go ahead, grab your screenshot of what this looks like, so you can go and take this back to your sales manager, or take this back to your sales team with all these things you want to now implement and get going. Because when we talk about building, like, again, I don't know about world class, because I've not worked in hundreds of different companies that are like the Fortune 25 level, or I guess technically the Fortune 50, 500 level, and like in other countries. So I don't know about world class, but I do know that this is an extremely fucking effective sales structure, and has worked for me several dozen times in orgs that we built from top to bottom, as well as myself having worked my way up as a sales rep in different, or in a door knocking format before going into the online high ticket coaching space. So on and so forth. So go ahead, grab that. Now, with that being said, if you're looking at this and you're like, holy shit, that sounds like a lot of work, you're damn fucking right. That's a ton of work, which is why I would love to help you. So down below, I have a link. You can go and schedule a call with me. We can talk about if the bottleneck in your business is building a sales org, or rather, building the sales team and infrastructure portion of your business. Would love to talk about it and what it could look like. Don't get me wrong, it's a lot of work. But if there's a high leverage activity you can build that's from a systematic perspective, right? Not automations, though automations play a part of it, but really building something that's a full system, building a great sales team and structure for sales will have such a huge impact on your revenue, because it will stabilize the number of dollars you make on a monthly basis. And then once you set the floor and you steadily increase it, mathematically, you're only guaranteed to continue growing the company over and over. Now, of course, if you're in a shrinking market, that's not necessarily true. If legalities roll out that make it hard to sell this product, also not very true. But like, taking those outside forces you have no control over and moving them away to things you have complete control over, if there's a super fucking high leverage thing you can do to scale your company from 1.2 to 3 to 6.8 to 10 million and above, it's building a great sales team. And with that being said, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. I will see you around the internet. Later.